describe for the record what this next summary chart is?
This is the debt payments that she made
So-
during these months.
Once again, this is debt service, not debt load.
That's right.
Okay.
This is not the amount of debt she possessed. This is the amount of payments that she made on that debt.
Okay, and for the months of,
June of 2021 through February of 2022. And I do need to make a note that in preparing for this hearing, I've noticed that in December of 2021, I made a duplication. So we need to reduce that number by about $44,000 in December.
okay.
It's still about $320,000.
Now, in January and February, it appears to go down, is that right?
That's right.
Let's once again look at the same information and expressed differently. Can you describe this for the record? This is the third chart on the PowerPoint.
So this is drawn from that previous data. And so it's just showing it in a pictorial format.
It seems after December, it seems to be going through the floor.
That's right. These are the payments that she made on the debt. She did pay off one of her lenders, one of the personal property loans. She did pay that off in January, and that was about $19,000. But mostly because of what had happened in November and December, so many transactions had been returned and not cleared by the bank. They did not. Some of them continued to try to draw in January and February, but they were unsuccessful. And so those payments were not made.
So this doesn't depict her debt load, the amount of debt she has, but rather she's just not paying.
That's correct. At least from the accounts I have. At least from the accounts that I have reviewed.
Sometime around this time period, did she take on another project?
Yes, she did.
Is it different than previous projects?
You're talking about the Legacy Way project, the large house?
Oh, okay, yes. Tell
Yes.
me about that.
She, the first REPC, which stands for Real Estate Purchase Contract, was in December of 2021, and it's a very large property on Legacy Way and Midway, and that's the property that she did end up closing in March of 22.
Okay. It begins though in December and concludes when in March?
Well, the settlement statement I've seen is dated March 4th. Some documents were signed March 4th. Some were signed on the 7th and recorded on the 8th of March.
How is this different from any of the other previous projects?
It was an unfinished house and just quite large. A very, very ambitious project. The purchase price, I believe, was $2.9 million.
What was its state of repair?
It was under construction, so it didn't have much inside, down to the studs, exposed wiring, things like that.
Did she ever, that you're aware of, give an estimate to lenders about what she anticipated those costs would be to rehab it?
Yes.
What was that?
Her estimate was between $3 and $4 million to rehab that property once it was acquired.
And how did she obtain this property?
Through hard money lenders.
All borrowed then?
Pardon me?
All borrowed?
Yes, all borrowed.
Okay, I want to talk about life insurance. Have you had the opportunity to look at life insurance policies that were owned by the Richins family?
Yes.
Do you know about how many there were?
I think there were 6.
This is the fourth chart of 4 from States Exhibit 69 PowerPoint. Can you describe what that is?
Yes, these are the life insurance policies on Eric Richins' life, and I've taken the effective date. Some of them were in 2015, 17, 18, and there's the one in 2022.
Okay. And those dates, those years are the date of purchase?
That's right.
Are they different for, I guess, different purposes?
It appears to be, yes.
In what ways?
Oh, the first one on the top is a mortgage insurance policy. So basically, it would pay off would pay down the mortgage. I think it's some odd amount, like 72.05% or something. But
okay, was there one for business?
I believe so, and I am unclear as I sit here if that's that $1 million one or not. So I'm sorry. There is one on the business where Eric and his business partner, if one passed away, then it would benefit the other and allow the other one to buy out the business from the estate of the other.
Okay, so it doesn't go to the spouse, but rather to the other business partner.
The business partner.
To buy out the spouse.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with a company, life insurance company called TrueStage?
Yes.
Is it some sort of business association with PenFed?
Yes.
Okay. To your knowledge, what is that relationship?
Well, TrueStage is an insurance company, and they typically market their product to credit union members, all sorts of credit union members, different credit unions.
Do you know whether the defendant was a member of PenFed?
She was, yes.
How about, do you know whether Eric Richins was?
I know that he was not.
Okay. Direct your attention to States Exhibit 62. And what is that, just for the record?
These are the bank account statements for Kouri Richins at PenFed Credit Union, the account 9118, for the period starting in October of 2021. It's just through April of 2022.
And States Exhibit 63. What is that?
This is a declaration of custodian of records, no records. And this is from PenFed Credit Union, stating that Eric Richins did not have any accounts at their institution.
Are you aware of an application from the defendant to TrueStage for life insurance in January of 2022?
Yes.
All right. Direct your attention to States Exhibit 17. What is States Exhibit 17?
This is the application for TrueStage individual term life insurance to age 80. And this is dated the end of January 28th or 29th of 2022.
And who's applying for what in this application?
This is for life insurance for Kouri Richins and for Eric Richins.
Now, is there something unusual about the information provided, contact information for each of those two applicants?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
The contact information is the P.O. box that Ms. Richins used for her business. Her email address is on there. There's no email address for Mr. Richins, and the phone number that's listed for Mr. Richins is not correct.
How is it different? Do you know off the top of your head?
Yes. It says 892, but his number starts 792.
And then ends with the 9317.
That's correct.
To be clear, the mailing address is the business address for K. Richins Realty for both of them?
Yes, this was pre-populated. It appears to be pre-populated this way with Kouri Richins and her P.O. box in Camas.
And when is it effective?
This policy was effective February 2nd, 2022.
Okay. Direct your attention to State's Exhibit 65. Now, before I go there, I'm sorry, I skipped over something. Early on, we talked about docket 127.
Yes,
That was, if I remember correctly, that was Throckmorton's report.
that's right.
And in there, he has how many question samples?
3 questioned samples, yes.
And so 1 and 2 are the power of attorney we've already addressed.
That's right.
So question number 3 is,
It's the signature on this life insurance policy.
I see. And so is your understanding what?
He calls them simulated forgeries, and that they are probably not Mr. Richins' signatures.
Okay, so now let's go to State's Exhibit 65. You ready? What is State's Exhibit 65?
This is a letter from True Stage Insurance to Eric Richins at that P.O. Box 759, dated February 4th, 2022.
And what is it informing Eric Richins of?
This is a welcome letter. Thank you for choosing True Stage Life Insurance, and talking about the premium. The premium would be deducted from the checking account 6577, which is the K. Richins Realty account,
Okay.
on February 14th for $46.50.
And that's an automatic withdrawal?
That is.
Okay. Have you examined AFCU account for K. Richins Realty at 6577 for December, January, February of December 21, January, February, March even of 2022?
Yes.
Okay. So in 6577, is there that automatic withdrawal that you were talking about?
There is in February, yes.
Is there any other insurance premiums that are paid from 6577?
No.
Okay. Now, let's take a look at State's Exhibit 64, and I'll let you just take a look at what 64 is and 37.
What was the second number? Is for
37. Could you describe for the record, what is 64?
64 is part of December. So this is an America First Credit Union bank account statement from America First Credit Union.
Which
Eric,
account?
Eric Richins, account 2204. So this is the joint account
Okay,
where the typical household expenses were paid. And it is for December 2021, pages, and it goes through, March 1st of 2022.
so looking at those, are there any of the insurance premiums that you've mentioned before paid out of 220?
The payments that had previously been made, historically been made, I should say, are paid here, but not that one.
But not the new one, just
Not the new
all the
one.
previous ones?
That's correct.
So, just a second. Have to steal my courage. Oh, okay. So we are looking at, in your chart there, I guess that you find evidence of payment of those top 4 in your chart?
I'm not sure
From the
what you mean.
2204?
The payment of the premium?
Yes,
Yes,
but not the bottom one.
that's correct.
Do you know if the defendant made any claims on those insurance policies,
Yes, she did.
particularly the true state?
Yes, she did.
Okay. How does the claim process work?
Mr. Rivers, you're getting back to that mic for me.
Sorry. How does the claim process work?
A claim is made, the insurance company would initiate a claim, give it a number, and then proceed to do their due diligence.
Okay. A couple of things. Based on your experience and training with working with insurance companies, is there a convention for naming these claims?
Yes, everyone's got a little bit different process, but in this situation, there are 2 different claims, and we can see from the information contained in the diary that the insurance company kept, and also the name, the number of the claim. We can see what day it was opened.
I see. Okay, so in addition, is there any, are insurance policies treated differently if they're made, a claim is made on them near in time to when they're opened versus if you've had a policy intact for 10 years or something?
Yes, I worked on, I don't know, a few dozen death investigations, and what happens, every insurance company will have a different policy, but typically if a life insurance policy is taken out and there's a death of the insured within a certain period of time, usually it's a year or 2, there's a standard death investigation that takes place. And I worked on many of those throughout my career.
Okay. I'd like you to take a look at what has been marked as State's Exhibit 18. What is State's Exhibit 18?
This is notes for claim 2204-28003. So this would be the claim opened on opened on April 28th. It's probably the 3rd one that they assigned that day or something.
Okay. And so that, do you know which policy this is referring to?
This one is the larger of the 2. This is the $250,000 policy that from 2017.
Okay. And is this what you referred to earlier as a diary?
Yes.
Okay. I think we have an State's Exhibit 67. We just, at the beginning of the day. I think Operating States Exhibit 67 is.
Yes. Do you have it?
Oh,
And I don't know.
yes, I do.
You
It's
do.
right here.
I have it.
It's, do you have it?
And can you identify for the record what States Exhibit 67?
Yes, this is a similar document, but this is for the other claim, number 220422-032. So this is the claim that was opened on April 22nd, 2022, and this is for, so this, the first one is for the $100,000 policy.
And it was opened on April 22nd, 2022.
That's right.
Okay. Let's look a little closer then. First of all, with States Exhibit 18, can you describe what this is recording and how it works with business?
This is a chronological diary, just note-taking about the date and time of a call or a contact, and just some notes. So over time, they can go back and refer to what happened and when.
I see. If some, now this is, States Exhibit 18 is referring to the 2017 policy.
That's right.
And it was made then by April 28th, so a week after the other one.
Yes.
Okay. In there, does the defendant ask some questions, or I guess is the insurance company asking the defendant some questions about the case?
Yes.
Do they want to know about fentanyl?
Yes, they needed the final death certificate showing the cause of death, and then they need to know if the fentanyl was prescribed.
And does the defendant respond to that?
She does. Toward the bottom, she said the fentanyl was not prescribed, so she can't give any information about it. She also added that she don't have any idea how did her husband got that. Just for the record, that's what it says. That's not my grammar.
Let's turn to States Exhibit 67. Now, to be clear, this is the first in time request,
Yes, it is.
and the policy that she opened, and I believe was effective, you said?
February 2nd. Yes.
At some point, I think in July of 2022, is there a conversation between the defendant and the insurance company about what's taking so long?
Yes. This would be, well, there were several conversations in July. They're talking about needing the medical records from the medical facility. And then finally in August, that they say, she called to know the status of the claim, and then they said that they had received the medical records from the clinic.
Okay, I wanted to. All right, so they finally get them when? The medical records?
That's, according to this, is 8/15/22.
In the, you see the entry 822, the bottom of page 2?
Yes.
they talking about the medical records there, that last?
It looks like, yes.
And that they received them on what day?
Well, this is when they received the invoice.
It's the invoice, so the payment. All right, so do they describe what is important to them as far as this investigation in at least one of those 822 entries?
Yes. Yes. It looks like they received the records on 8/2 and 8/11. I don't know if that matters. Okay, yes, they received the 36 pages of records on 8/11. And then there's substance use other than prescribed. It's marijuana once or twice a year. And no concerns about substance abuse in the household.
Have a moment.
Yes.
That's all the questions I have.
Who is doing the questioning? Ms. Nestor, level with me. How much time do you think you have with Ms. Harrington?
30 minutes.
Okay. Do you have about 4 minutes?
By a gentleman named Todd Gabler, is that right?
That's right.
And Todd Gabler is a private investigator, also not law enforcement at this time.
I don't think he's ever been law enforcement, but that's true.
And how did you know Mr. Gabler?
We have been colleagues for 30 years or so.
And by colleagues, do you share office space? Do you work together on cases just randomly, or what do you mean by colleagues?
No, I have worked on the same cases that he has worked on. I would not say we've ever worked on cases together.
Okay. And he approached you and asked if you would be interested in working for Eric Richins' family, who was dealing with trust issues, right?
With the trust, the Eric Richins Living Trust, yes.
Who's the trustee of the Eric Richins Living Trust?
Katie Richins Benson, his sister.
And so would she have been the individual basically responsible for paying you as the trustee?
Yes.
And did you meet with her?
I don't know that I ever met with her. We had phone conversations.
Okay. And did you have a contract of employment with her or with the trust?
An engagement letter, yes.
And what did they agree to pay you to help them?
My hourly rate and yeah,
How much was that?
$325 an hour.
And I believe you said you worked for them up until a county attorney approached you. Is that right?
That's right.
So how long a period of time did you work solely for the trust?
I don't remember when I first started working for them. In the summer. It was in the summer, I believe, of 22.
So a few months after Mr. Richins had passed.
Something like that. I can get that exact date for you. Something like that. And then toward the fall of that year, they engaged in some litigation, and I was pretty much out of the picture at that point.
So maybe 5 or 6 months, you think you worked for them?
Probably 4 or 5, yeah.
And do you remember a total how much they paid you during the time you were employed by them?
I think it was about $9,000.
And during that time, did they provide you with records to analyze?
I did have some records, yes.
Right, and so these are being produced to you by Eric Richins' family.
That's right.
And that would include these life insurance documents?
I did have some, whether or not they're this, I honestly don't remember if it includes this one. I don't think it did. There were several New York life insurance policies that I reviewed.
Do you know how they obtained those records before they gave them to you? Are you aware? You may or not be.
I don't know.
What other records did the Richins family give you to analyze?
I had some of the C&E Masonry bank account records. I had some tax returns. I know I had some other things. I had some odds and ends. So nothing, and I do not know how they obtained them.
And then how did it come about that you switched from working from Eric's family to the prosecution team in this case?
Well, in my view, they are separate entities, separate cases, separate engagements, and I did not feel like I could work on both. And at that time, when I was engaged by Summit County, I had not had any contact, well, I shouldn't say any. I had really not had much, if any, contact since like the fall. I did have a Zoom call with their counsel where they just kind of wanted to see where I had left off, but the complaint that they filed doesn't include any of my work.
And the complaint that they filed is basically an effort to make sure that Kouri does not get a single penny from Eric Richins' trust, right? Is that your understanding of litigation?
I actually don't know much about that litigation, and on purpose, I have tried to ignore it. I try to stay in my lane and in my box, and this is the box I'm in, and so I really don't know the status. I don't know what's been happening there. My overall understanding is they were trying to enforce the trust, the Eric Richins Living Trust, and associated documents. That's a weird way to say that, but that's my understanding.
And when you were in their box, when you were in the box with the trust, was it your understanding that Kouri Richins was aware that a trust had been created before Eric passed?
I was under the impression of the opposite, that she did not know about the trust. And whether or not she knew or didn't know, I really do not know the answer to that question.
So you've not reviewed any police reports in this case that talked about interviews of Katie the morning of Eric's death?
I know that there were some that took place, but I have purposely not reviewed them.
So you don't have personal knowledge, one way or the other, about whether Kouri knew this trust was in place before Eric died?
I cannot testify one way or another about that.
Okay. Did Todd Gabler ever give you any documents to analyze, or it all came from the attorneys of the trust?
I didn't get anything from the attorneys.
Where did you get the documents from the trust?
I believe I got everything from Katie.
From Katie, the sister?
I believe so.
Okay. All right. Are you still retained in any way by the trust?
No. I haven't engaged in conversation with them. I haven't responded to anything for better part of a year.
Okay. Did you review new documents before you testified today that you did not review before the detention hearing?
Yes.
What are the new documents you reviewed before today?
We have more bank account statements. There are loan documents that I did not have before, and that includes the promissory notes. And I know that payment ledgers have been requested, and there's very little of that due to the nature of the loans. I searched and obtained many more deeds in South Carolina and in Utah, and the UCC filings of the personal property loans, the unsecured loans, the insurance documents. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little conversational, but at the detention hearing, it was early in the week, say a Tuesday, for example, and most of the documents, the financial documents that I reviewed, I had for just a couple of days,
Okay.
literally.
I want to talk about these properties that you've looked at as far as Ms. Richins. It appears from your testimony with the county attorney that you were looking at the debt that those properties put her in. Is that right?
Yes, and I did testify about that exact point at the detention hearing, because at that time, that's all I had access to were those recorded documents. So I could see the amount of the trust deed, and I did acknowledge that that does not necessarily represent what she owes on it, but what she encumbered. That's why I'm calling it an encumbrance.
So these charts that went up dealt with what she owed on the property to the best that you could determine looking at publicly available records, right?
Not necessarily. The timeline chart that has all the colors. I mean, that has a date, well, it has a point at which she no longer owned it. Her name is no longer on that.
Okay.
And so that represents that she no longer had that debt.
Successfully flipped that property, right?
Successfully would be a judgment call, and I've not been asked to give opinions.
Okay. All right, so let's talk about equity.
Okay?
When someone owns a home, you have what the home is worth when you buy it, but then you put money down on it, you pay money towards your mortgage, and at some point you build up something called equity in your house, right?
That's true.
And when you have a lot of equity in your house, you can go, like she did on their house in Willow Creek, right? And go, I say to a banker, hey, I have this property that has about $600,000 worth of equity in it. Can I borrow $50,000? And what is the banker likely to say to that?
A banker's likely to look at a lot of factors, right? Go through some due diligence. Given a lot of different factors, probably going to say yes.
Right. Because equity has value.
That's true.
And it's part of your net worth.
That is true.
So when you're evaluating someone's net worth, you're looking at their debt for sure, but you're also looking at things they have that have value.
That's true.
Their jewelry, right?
That's true.
Their artwork,
Yes.
their stocks and bonds,
Yes.
their equity and property.
Yes.
You were not asked to make that evaluation by this county attorney's office, correct? Because I don't see that you did a net worth evaluation here.
I have done some. There's some holes in it. There's some holes in it, so.
Okay. So you haven't today put on evidence of Ms. Richins' net worth?
No, and there are a lot of things that I don't know. Like, I'm aware that she has a tax liability, and I know that I can estimate a range, but I don't know how much that is, and that would factor into her net worth.
And I know you're an experienced accountant. You would never make a statement about someone's net worth if you knew you were missing critical documents to make that evaluation. Fair?
I would definitely put a footnote on that.
Okay. As far as the profits that Ms. Richins made when she flipped these houses, unless you have the settlement statement, the closing statement, all the records, it's not always possible to tell what her profit margin was, is it?
Well, profit margins, the answer is maybe yes, maybe no. Do you mind if I explain?
Go ahead.
Okay. For example, Ms. Richins has a schedule that she had submitted to some lenders that talked about the projects that she'd done. And she included in there is the acquisition price, the rehab budget, what it was sold for, and her profit. And I've gone through a few of those, and they're not accounted for correctly. The sales price does not reflect what her margin is. You asked me about margin, and the margin is not correct. Her profit is not correct on that. What I can tell you, the answer to your question, is I do have the settlement statements on a lot of those. And the settlement statements are prepared by the title company at closing. And so that'll go down the item, the sales price, and the deductions from that, like the property taxes that need to be paid, the encumbrances, like the first trustee, the second, if there are more, some other agreed upon amount that needs to be on one side of the ledger or another. And then we get to a net proceeds amount. And then I can go to her bank account statement and I can see those funds hit the bank account statement. But the way she had borrowed money, not everybody who was involved, I use that term as not everyone who had participated financially in that project would have had a deed filed that would have them hit the settlement statement. So once the funds hit her bank account, then she also had to pay out some funds associated with that property.
So once she flipped a property, paid off everybody that helped her out to buy it or rehabbed it, whatever's left in her pocket after she pays everybody is her profit.
That's right.
And you can't say that, what that amount was on every one of these properties, can you?
Not every single one, but I can on many.
And if you, as I understand it, she was servicing some pretty major debt and servicing it, right? Sending those checks out.
That's correct.
Check after check after check, making payment to her lenders, right?
Yeah, they mostly were auto withdrawals, but yes.
And out of all those properties that you have with the pretty colors on your chart, how many of those got foreclosed on before she flipped them?
Before she flipped them? Well, she doesn't own any anymore.
So none is the answer, right?
None then.
So she successfully purchased the property, got what she needed to rehab it, flipped it, and it never went under on any of those properties, except for after she got arrested, before she was arrested.
And again, I'm gonna not use the word success because everyone's got a different version of what that term means. But I think what you're trying to say is, did she end up selling them? Yes, she did.
Okay. All right. Did you ever interview any of Ms. Richins' hard money investors?
Yes.
Right. Did any of them, other than Greengrass, did any of them ever file suit against her for defaulting on their deal, as far as you know?
I do not know that.
All right. The joint account with Eric and Kouri that they paid their bills out of and their kids' soccer fees and things like that, did you ever compare the deposits from Eric into that account versus deposits from Kouri into that account?
I'm aware of how much was kind of coming and going.
And who put more money in that account?
Eric's paycheck was auto-deposited there, and that was more than Kouri's. There were funds coming and going, and so, but they were for different purposes.
Would
So
you disagree with me that Kouri substantially deposited more in that account than Eric did, in the joint account, from her KRR account?
I don't know if I would agree with that or not, because there's a lot. There are a couple of instances where C&E, there is money coming from C&E. I will say that there are a lot of instances where there are, say, like there's a $5,000 payment from Kouri Richins Realty account, the 6577, into the joint account. But there are some instances where there's a lot of money coming from Eric's resources too.
Okay, now I want to back up just a little bit when you very first got on the stand and you were talking about the accounts, who had access or whose name they were in.
Yes.
So spouses have their own decision about who does the money, who doesn't do the money, and you were not privy to that arrangement between Eric or Kouri, were you?
No.
So you don't know if they sat down at dinner every night and looked at every one of their bank account together, do you?
I do not know that.
You do not know if Kouri gave Eric the password to all her bank accounts and said, babe, it's shared money, look at whatever you want to look at. You don't know if that happened.
I do not know.
You don't know how often they talked about finances or what Eric knew or didn't know about Kouri's business.
That's correct.
You do know that Eric invested in at least one property himself through his C&E account, the
Branson Lane.
thank you.
I would not call it investing. I know that there were the C&E checks that went into the Kouri Richins Realty account.
Okay. Looks like they invested in the property if you were just looking from the outside, fair?
I have other information that tells me that's not the case. That's why I've not included it in my testimony.
Okay. You also looked at the prenup agreement, and we all know what prenups or agreements are from TV, right? It's an agreement before you get married about how you're going to split stuff up if you get a divorce, right?
That's true.
Okay. And in the prenup that was signed when they got married, was the home contained in that prenup that you've reviewed? The home they lived in?
I don't recall. I'd be happy to look at it if you let me
Take a second, please. It's exhibit number, it's docket 106.
I'm skimming this. I don't recall it's in here. Is that correct?
It's not.
Okay.
Thank you for checking. So if you don't have your home in a prenup, regardless of whose name is on the title, would you agree with me that as a spouse, you have an interest in your marital home, correct?
That's,
Well, hold on.
Oh.
They're about to object that it calls for a legal conclusion.
Your Honor, if I can argue this because I
He calls for a legal conclusion, sustained.
Okay. Let me ask you this way. You testified earlier that Ms. Richins got a HELOC on that house. Is that right?
that's correct.
All right. And you don't know if you're not a lawyer, you're not a divorce lawyer, certainly, right?
That's correct.
So you can't tell, and I almost just called in the jury. Automatically. You can't tell the jury. You can't tell whether or not Ms. Richins had a lawful interest in that home that enabled her to put any type of lien on it or anything based on her marital interest, because you're not a divorce lawyer, right?
That's that legal conclusion.
Okay. So, and you also don't know if Eric knew about the HELOC or when he knew about it or what he did about it.
Objection calls for speculation.
I'm
Well, I think
asking-
that's what she's establishing, but you can answer the question.
I am aware that there are indicators that he knew about it in October of 2020.
That's right, because he told it to the lawyer that he was saying about maybe getting a divorce, right? So when he told the divorce lawyer, hey, she took out this money on my account, that was October of 2020, right? So we
and,
know
and the indicators are that's when he learned about it.
right, so a little less than 2 years before he passed away.
A year and a half, yeah.
Okay. And how many payments did you see Eric Richins make on that HELOC after October of 2020? In your review of every payment that was made toward that HELOC, how many did Eric make out of his account?
Out of which account?
Out of his accounts.
The 657s, or I mean the C&E account?
Did he make any out of the C&E account?
No,
Did he ever sign a check for that you ever saw?
I don't believe so.
And it was coming out of their joint account or out of the KRR account, the realty account?
Mostly out of the 5244 account, which was Kouri's account.
Okay, so she's paying it. The HELOC that she took on it.
Yes,
Okay. And he knew about it in October of 2020.
right.
Okay. And they stayed together, obviously. All right. If the home was not contained in the prenup, since you did work for the trust, is it not true that the trust is taking the position that the home gets poured into the trust upon death?
I don't know.
She's just asking what Ms. Carrington knows. Let's
What-
find out.
Thank you. Do you know?
I don't know.
Okay.
To be clear, I think my knowledge on these issues is
Better than
superior
all of
to
ours.
that than anybody else in the room, and so I can keep it straight.
Well, yeah, and I appreciate that, John, because I think the court in summary judgment motion 2 weeks ago ruled on this very issue.
I can give you chapter and verse on these if we need it.
Okay, thank you.
You can just keep it.
I try to skip
Which is my
past.
point, Your Honor,
I
we can keep
understand.
moving.
We'll just keep it.
Okay, just a minute. Just making sure I don't miss anything. I want to talk about those life insurance policies that were on your chart. If you could look at that chart in front of you, those 6 policies.
It's not up, but that's fine.
Oh, I thought you had a binder, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I can put it back up.
Thank you. It's exhibit number,
Yep.
is
Number
exhibit
69.
69, yes, sir.
Get back.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I think I've got that.
Now,
Give that to you.
of those policies on exhibit 69, the very first policy is a mortgage policy,
That's correct.
which just pays off the mortgage if you die.
It doesn't pay it off, it pays it down significantly.
Right, sorry, you said that, 70, some weird percent.
Some weird percent, yeah.
Okay, so that life insurance policy is made payable to the mortgage company.
And as far as I know, it was paid directly to them.
Okay. And in your chart, it says it was paid to the trust. Do you see that? They were the
I do not.
beneficiary?
I say they were the beneficiary, but that was, no, that's not what it said, but it was paid toward the mortgage is my understanding.
So, Kouri, and when was that policy obtained? Back-
15.
Okay. And do you even know Eric applied for that, right? Himself?
I do not know.
You don't know.
I don't know. I
Okay.
don't recall.
Second policy, what's the second one?
On my chart is the $250,000 true stage from 17.
And that's 2017.
That's correct.
And do you know whether Eric, that is not one of the questionable signatures, right? You've agreed that's Eric's signature on that application.
Let's make it clear, I'm not making any determination out of signatures. That's not me.
Okay. So the report you read from the handwriting analyst
That one.
didn't look at that signature of the true stage $250,000 policy, correct?
Actually, I don't know. He looked at, in his report, he lists a few dozen exemplars. I don't know if that's one or not.
Okay. Do you know whether or not Eric Richins had to take a medical exam to get that life insurance policy?
I don't recall. I think I've got the documents for that, but I don't, off the top of my head, no.
So you can't say right now, as you sit here, whether Eric was involved in getting that policy or not. You just don't know.
I don't recall. There's both of those next two. There's the true stage and the auto owners. That was part of a group of policies where there's one on Ms. Richins, one on Mr. Richins, and somewhere along the line there's some on the kids too.
That auto insurance policy, that's the big one. That's $1 million,
The
right?
auto owners. Mhm.
And what is the date that insurance policy was applied for?
That's also in 2017.
So, help me with math, 5 years before he died.
That's right.
And that $1 million policy, there's no way they're gonna insure somebody for $1 million if they don't have a medical exam. Do you think that's fair?
I think that's a fair statement, yes.
Okay. And then the next insurance policy was what day?
This is in April of 2018 with New York Life.
So that's 4 years before he passed.
That's right.
And do you know who applied for that?
I have the documents, but I don't recall. I'm sorry.
And do you know whether and how much was that one for?
500,000.
And do you, again, that's pricey, bless you, Your Honor, that's a pricey insurance policy. Again, I would imagine that would require a medical exam. Do you know if Eric submitted to one?
I know that he did on a policy. I've seen that, and I can't recall which one it or ones. I just don't recall those details.
So that really just leaves, and the policy that he had with his partner, the buy-sell policy, which partners do all the time, right?
That's
in
correct.
business,
Yes,
that money goes to the partner. That doesn't go to the spouse.
they're set up specifically that way. Yes.
So the only policy on there that was obtained within any short period of time before Eric died was the very last one for $100,000, right?
Right, and that's usually, typically in my experience, that's an amount that probably would not have required an exam.
Totally agree. And that policy is one of those ones that we all get in the mail if you belong to a credit union, where they send you a little flyer, you get it in your junk mail, and it says, hey, you want to up your insurance? No exam, just sign here and we'll add some more for free. Please do that. Is that what that is?
It is a brochure from the credit union, but what you've just described it's not contained in there. It was an offer of life insurance though.
Made by their credit union
Yes.
to all their credit union members.
Mhm.
It's just like a perk for being a credit union member.
It's a marketing brochure, yes.
Here's some pretty cheap insurance, grab it if you want it, right?
That would be a fair statement, yes.
Okay. And that's the policy that was taken out, I guess, that was signed to become effective a few weeks before, or a month and a half before he passed.
A month, yeah.
Okay. And again, that's $100,000 out of a total insurance amount that had been obtained years before, exceeding $2 million.
That's
Right?
correct.
Were you ever asked to look at Eric's financial records in his company or his business? Anybody ever give those to you?
I do have his bank accounts, the bank accounts for their company, yes.
And the bank accounts that you talked about where, no, I'll strike that one. Okay, court's indulgence, I think it's about 30 on. Can I ask a quick question? Your Honor, thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Carrington.
Mr. Burns, is there any redirect within the scope of process?
Yes. Ms. Carrington, you were asked about a successful flip.
Yes.
If we're measuring success as an amount above and beyond all costs that go into purchasing, rehabbing, taxing, etc., the flip, that is a measure of successful flip. Were these purchases and subsequent sales successful?
If they were sold, if that's your measure of success, then they were sold, so that would be successful. There were several instances where the investors were not going to get their money out of that particular property, so their trust deed, their investment was transferred to a different property where there was room for them to be repaid.
So some of these subsequent sales did not even meet the investment that went into them.
That's right.
So at the time of the defendant's death, March 4th, what was the summary of debt owing? Do you have the figure for that?
Yes. 3 of the homes had recently, prior to Eric's death, had been sold. for about $170,000 in net proceeds. And then Miss Richins had retained, I believe, 5 properties at that time. The HELOC was over its limit. It was at $252,000 on its balance. Her credit line at PenFed had been exceeded. Her credit line at America First was about maxed out, and she had ended the year in 2021 in the hole. I think in her 5244 account she was in the hole $15,000, and in the 6577 account she was in the hole $22,000. There just were no resources.
When you say there's no resources, so then she's unable to service all the debt she's acquired.
That's correct. And at that time, again, it's kind of mix and match to try and figure out how much debt load she had. She owed about $4 million on, well, let me restate that. The trust deeds associated with the property that she retained were about $4 million. So she probably owed a little bit less than that. And then the personal property loans, the accounts payable loans, I believe her balance at that time was about between $500,000 and $600,000.
Somewhere then between $3 million and $4 million is her total debt load she has at the time of March 4th, 2020.
No, it would go the other direction. So she had roughly $4 million in real estate that she owed on, and then another $500,000 to $600,000 in those personal property loans. So $4.5 million, something like that.
You mentioned the HELOC in talking to defense counsel. Do you know, other than that $150,000 payment on principal in October of 2020, were there any other payments that you're aware of that were substantially beyond just paying the interest?
No, they're pretty much the minimum payments for the rest of the life of the loan.
When did she stop drawing money on the HELOC?
Do you mind if I look at my notes? In October of 2021 is the last draw of $2,300 payable to Kouri Richins Realty.
And why didn't she just take some more out of there?
Objection to speculation, Your Honor.
I think he's asking a financial question.
The balance of that account, the limit was $250,000, and as of that time, the balance was $253,199.25. So there was no room to draw more.
Did these lenders that you're aware of analyze the defendant's net worth when she was taking out these loans? Accounts receivable.
It appears, yes, they did.
Okay, so how much did she have in artwork?
I don't recall any artwork listed.
Okay, how about jewelry?
I don't recall any jewelry listed either.
Okay. When you look at the AFCU bank accounts, from which bank account were the payments made to the top insurance 1 through 4?
Those were paid from the joint checking 2204.
Okay, and that's distinguished from the last one, the one made on February 4th, or entered into on February 4th, with apparently no notice to Eric, that was paid from which account?
From the 6577 account for Kouri Richins Realty.
I have no.
Ms. Nestor.
Nothing, Your Honor, thank you.
Ms. Carey, can you step down?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Bloodworth, what's the plan?
Your Honor, the state does not intend to call any more witnesses.
Does the state rest?
The state
Okay. Ms. Lewis, Ms. Nestor, Mr. Ramos, is the defense going to be calling any witnesses?
No, Your Honor, we won't be.
It's late. There's a lot of information here and a lot of counts. I'm disinclined to cram that in today. What's a reasonable time to come back to tomorrow, confirm that Ms. Richins wants to waive her right to testify, and argue about the showing of probable cause?
Whatever time is fine.
You're allowed to have a preference.
Later the better. Later the better. Later
Okay.
the better.
Do you want to do it in the afternoon?
How about 10 o'clock?
10 a.m. Mr. Bloodworth?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Very good. Mr. Ramos?
Yes, sir.
All right. Ms. Richins, we will retire for the evening. Court will be in recess until 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. I wish you all the very best. Please listen to the deputy's instructions. We do this in an orderly manner. We'll be back on the record at 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. Thank you. Court's in recess.